Thank you for choosing the implant torque verification system from ImplantWise Dental. This system is designed to be somewhat universal. It will work with a fixed toggle style torque wrench which has only one type of torque delivery, a variable torque wrench that's a friction style, and also a click type torque wrench. It will work with a finger grip torque wrench, with beam torque wrenches of different styles, and even electric torque wrenches. It will also work with different types of screwdrivers, whether they are hex, square, whether they're fixed, or whether they're latch grip. Within the system, you'll find a verification tool, a connector tool, a key, and some markers. And we'll show you how to use each and every one of these with each and every one of these systems. Thank you. How to verify if your cantilever beam torque wrench is working correctly. What we're going to do here is we're going to connect the screwdriver into the connector tool. Now remember, when you use this, the key must be used appropriately in order to make sure that this is completely snug and it's not going to come loose during the test. So you're going to tighten, rotate, tighten, rotate, tighten. Because 30 Newton centimeters or 35 Newton centimeters, which we may be testing this at, is actually quite a large amount of torque. So we do not want this to slip. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. So now we have the connector tool and the screwdriver. We're going to use the verification tool. So place this directly into the verification tool. Make sure it's locked in properly. This should always be stored at 0 because you never want to work harden this verification tool because it won't work accurately in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our cantilever torque wrench and see what values exist on it. In this particular case, we're going to be testing for 35 Newton centimeters. This torque wrench is designed such that when the beam is in the middle of the arrow, you have achieved 35 Newton centimeters. This is not true of all of these types of torque wrenches. We have a different type of torque wrench here, which we've tested, where 30 Newton centimeters is on the leading edge. So you need to understand which type of torque wrench you're going to be using. And this is one way of helping you to determine whether or not you have a torque wrench that reads in the middle or a torque wrench that reads on the leading edge. So we're going to set this for 35 because that's our target. Once you get close to the 35 value, check the upper dial, goes to 0. There we are. Then lock. Okay, we have this set up. Now you're going to connect the torque wrench, clinical torque wrench, make sure it clicks down, and use it in a rotation that is clockwise. So we're going to have to see whether this clicks at 35 Newton centimeters. So we're going to rotate this. Do it slowly. There's a couple of ways that you can monitor whether you're reaching 35 Newton centimeters. You can film it the way that I am, or very simply, you can use some kind of a peak value indicator. We supply some polyoiler film that's trimmed into a U shape that you simply place in between the beam arms, like such, and then if you note that it's the tail end that's actually touching, when you turn this, it provides you with a peak value. To determine whether or not that peak value is the correct value, hold it, look at it directly on the top and see whether your 35 Newton centimeter aligns with your beam, which it does, which means that this torque wrench is now accurately verified. And that's how simple it is to check whether or not your beam wrench is working correctly. When you've finished, always undo this, turn this down to 0, disconnect your screwdriver, your connector, use the screwdriver latch grip, take it out and store in a dry place. We're now going to show you a torque test where the actual torque wrench is actually incorrect. So we're going to show you how you would know that this is an incorrect reading on this torque wrench. Again, when you set your torque, choose a target value. So we're going to use 30. So we're going to tighten this up to 30. And now what we're going to do is we have selected our screwdriver and we are going to tighten this one up to 30. So set at 0, 30 and locked. We're going to connect these two together. So remember, we're always going to go clockwise, so we're going in the in position. And we're going to rotate this. Whenever you rotate one of these toggle wrenches, ensure that you do it slowly because it suffers from inertia, which means it has to be rotated slowly. But what's happening here is that this is braking way before this one breaks. So this is turning and it's releasing at 30 Newton centimeters, which we know is correct. This is not. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a value onto here. So let's add 5 Newton centimeters to 35. Let's lock this. This is now set at 35. So the same thing, we're going to rotate this. And again, you can hear the click that the top one is not breaking. So this value is now greater than 35. So we're now going to add another 5 Newton centimeters to make this 40 Newton centimeters. Unlock it. Now it breaks. So we know that this one is breaking between 35 and 40 Newton centimeters when it actually states 30 Newton centimeters. So this clearly is an error, but let's find out exactly what this is going to read at. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off 2.5. We're going to meet this halfway. So we're going to set this up at 37.5 and see what happens with the braking now. This is braking close to 37.5, which means the 37.5 is actually very close to the torque value on here. This is reading 20% higher than it should be. Instead of 30, it's actually reading greater than 20% higher, about nearly 30% higher. This should be reading 30, but it's actually reading 37.5. So that means this torque wrench would be over-delivering the screw torque onto the screws, and it will cause your screws to potentially fail sooner because they will distort. In the last video, we showed you a torque wrench that was actually over-delivering on its torque value. Although it said 30, it was actually delivering 37.5. That means it was actually under reading. It was under reading at 30, but delivering at 37.5. We're now going to show you the converse of that, where a torque wrench is actually going to be over reading. In other words, what we're going to do is it's going to say 30, but it's going to be under delivering that torque value. So in this particular case, your screws will not be too tight, they will be too loose. So again, the first thing that we do is we take the variable torque wrench, we pick a target value. We're going to pick 30. There's 30 Newton centimeters. We've already connected our screwdriver to our connector tool. And we're now going to connect that to our verifier. We're going to set our verifier at 30 Newton centimeters. And here we are, 30 Newton centimeters, lock it. Now connect the two. Remember, we're going to be turning this in a clockwise direction. So this is set at 30, this is set at 30. We know that this is validated, so we're going to see what happens in response. Again, these two should break almost simultaneously. This is breaking earlier. So now this is delivering less than 30 Newton centimeters. Again, do this very slowly because of inertia. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take off about 10%. We're going to make this now 27. It's not breaking. This is not breaking, so this is now below. This one here is below 27 because the one that breaks first, remember, is the one with the weakest torque. Let's take off a full 5 Newton centimeters. This is now set at 25 Newton centimeters. It's still breaking too early. That means I think I would, if I was using this in a clinic, I would believe that this is breaking at 30. In fact, it's breaking below 25. So let's take off another 2.5 Newton centimeters. We're now at 17.5 Newton centimeters. And again, this is breaking, which means we would be under delivering the correct amount of torque to the screw. Let's take off another 2.5. We're now at 20 Newton centimeters. We started at 30, we're now at 20 Newton centimeters. This is still not breaking the fiducial. So we're now going to take off another 5 Newton centimeters, taking it down to 15. Now it's breaking. So we now know this is set between 15 and 20 Newton centimeters, but it's clearly far too low. So the way that we would figure out what's going on with this is we would actually make a mental note that if we're going to use this torque wrench, this is far too insufficient to provide 30 Newton centimeters. So we would actually dial this up, making a mental note of where this should be. So we're going to dial this up to 35 Newton centimeters. We're going to set this back at 30. And we would check this. Again, it's not working. What this realistically means is there's probably material on the inside of your torque wrench that needs to be cleaned out. The way that you clean out these is you simply unscrew them at their heel. Take them apart, lubricate them, lubricate in here as well, clean and dry them, and then put them back together again. And then hopefully check it again and ensure that you're actually providing the correct torque that you should be. If you're going to test one of these toggle types torque wrenches, we suggest you clean it first, oil it, put it back together. So I'll show you how we place these together. This is simply a spring system that basically sits on here. Remember, this should always be stored at 0 because this spring will work hard and it won't work after a while. Connect the center bar and also try and connect you have an in-out, try and connect your in line with your actual markings. It makes it much easier for you to test this. Tighten this up. We're going to test this at 30 Newton centimeters. So we're going to set our target torque at 30. Newton centimeters. We're going to take our verifier and we're going to set that at 30 Newton centimeters. Remember, when you get close, set it with the 0 mark on, 30 Newton centimeters, lock. We've already connected our screwdriver to the actual connection tool. So place these together, verifier and connection tool. Now take your torque wrench, place it appropriately, and holding this firmly, you're going to rotate and you're going to see which one breaks first. Remember, whichever one breaks first is the weaker of the two. If this breaks first, and we know this is actually a fiducial and it's set at 30, then we know this is under torquing. If this one breaks first, we know this one is over torquing. So again, slowly for inertia, rotate. And do that again. Now we found on that occasion that this one broke initially and then this one broke, so we're actually quite close. Again, slowly. We're finding that both of these are breaking at approximately the same time. So we can be somewhat assured we're delivering the correct amount of torque of 30 Newton centimeters once we put this one back together. And again, when you take this off prior to using it, take this down to 0. Take this apart, use your screwdriver, unlock this one, turn it down to 0, and store it until the next time you need to use it. So it's that simple. I'm going to share with you how straightforward it is to test an electronic system that delivers torque using the implant torque verification system from ImplantWise. The first thing we're going to do is choose a target torque below about 40 Newton centimeters on our machine. So this is set at 25. We're then going to take our verification tool and we're going to set this at 25 as well. Remember, centi-Newton meters is the same as Newton centimeters, just a different way of writing the scale. So let's set this up at 25. When you get close to 25, look at the gold ring and check that's on 0, then lock this. This is now set. Now we have to put a latch grip into our connector because this accepts a latch grip, so that's what we're going to be using. But to make it easy on yourself, take your latch grip and connect it to one of the finger drivers or thumb drivers, then place that into the center of the jaws of this connector tool and then tighten it lightly. Because what you're going to do, unlike all the other cases, you're actually going to lift this up slightly so that you have more running room for the tool, because this connector is actually slightly longer in here than it is on the driver. Once it's finger tight, use the key. Remember, rotate, because you don't want this to slip, otherwise you're going to get a false reading. Then take off the thumb drive or the thumb holder and place this directly into the verification tool. Make sure it clicks home. Then connect this to the electronic torque driver. Now what will happen is whichever one has the highest torque will not break. The one with the lowest torque will break first. This has an audible noise when it hits its peak. This one clicks. So let's activate this and see what happens. Audible. It's not turning this at 25, so that tells me although this is set at 25 Newton centimeters, it's not reaching that 25 Newton centimeters. So let's have a look at what it is actually reaching. So undo this and turn this down. I'm going to turn this down by 5 Newton centimeters. This is now reading 20, and let's see if this rotates at 20. It did the first time, but it's not predictable. It did that time. Every second or third time, it's hitting 20 Newton centimeters. So let's take that down just a fraction. Let's take that down to 19 Newton centimeters. Now it's hitting 90 Newton centimeters. So that's telling me my electronic torque device is more predictable at 19 Newton centimeters than it is if I take it back up to 25. Here's my 25 Newton centimeters. Let me try that again. So I cannot trust this to be delivering 25 Newton centimeters. So I'll have to make some account for that if I'm going to use this electronic torque wrench, because it's far more likely that this is giving me 19 or 20 Newton centimeters, which is about 20% less than I require. So my screws are not going to be tight enough. So this is one reason why you need to check all your torque wrenches regularly to make sure that they're working correctly. Otherwise, you're going to be under torquing or over torquing these screws, and you're going to get an increase in failure rate. Thank you. Video, I'm going to show you how you can test a torque wrench which has a fixed value. This one is set at 30 Newton centimeters. So what you're going to do with this one is you're going to take your ImplantWise torque wrench, ensure it's unlocked, and then dial in 30. Remember, when you get close, use the upper ring to ensure that you are set at 30 exactly. There we are, this is set at 30. Now we're going to lock it. We're going to connect this to the torque wrench using our connector tool. We've already placed our screwdriver in here, and we've tightened it firmly so that this article here doesn't rotate. Take your torque wrench, make sure you're positioning it in the correct site, hold this, and then very slowly, over about 2 seconds, rotate. Now this is braking. We're going to do that again. That means that our torque validator is reading higher than our torque wrench. So what we're going to do is to test what the value of this torque wrench is. It's supposed to be around 30, but it's not reading at 30. So we're going to take off, let's take off 2 Newton centimeters, so it will read 28, and see what the effect is. Again, we're going to rotate this, but now you can see that the device that fails first is this. That means that this torque is not braking at 30, but it's braking this verification jig at 28. Therefore, the torque value of this lies between 28 and 30, which is highly acceptable. But we're actually going to test what it is. So now we're going to add 1 Newton centimeter. So now we're at 29. And we're going to see which one breaks first. This one's braking first. So we know, because this one's braking first, that this is actually slightly lower than 29. We know it's above 28, so we're going to give it half a Newton centimeter less. So this is 1.5 Newton centimeters below this value. And we're going to try it again. Now it breaks. Now it clicks. This one. Now it breaks. Now it clicks. So this torque wrench is actually been verified to be at 28.5 Newton centimeters, which is perfectly accurate because 1.5 Newton centimeters is within 5%. So that means that this is actually a very good value. This is a thumb grip integral torque wrench screwdriver. It has 15 Newton centimeters on it. We're going to test whether or not this is actually accurate and should be used and is correct at 15 Newton centimeters. So we're going to use the kit from ImplantWise, the torque verification kit. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to seat this in the connector tool. Seat it down as far as you can, and then finger tighten it. Make sure it's centered. Then, using the key, this is important, tighten it all the way around, rotating the connector. This chuck has to be tight, even at 15 Newton centimeters, otherwise this may not work correctly in the test. With the torque verifier, set this at 15. It should always be set at 0 when it's not being used to prevent work hardening of the spring. So we're going to set this up at 15. This is now at 15 Newton centimeters. We're going to lock it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the connector tool. We're going to seat it. And then if this is at 15 Newton centimeters and it's correctly working, both of these should click at the same time. Whichever one is the weakest will click first. You can hear this is clicking. So this is lower than 15 Newton centimeters. So we're actually going to see what it clicks at. So we're going to take off 2 Newton centimeters. So we're now at 13. Now when I turn it, this verifier is actually clicking. So this is set somewhere between 13 and 15. So we're going to dial in 1 more Newton centimeter to make it 14. Now it spins, this doesn't click. So we're going to take off 0.5 Newton centimeter. So this is now set at 13.5. Still not spinning. So we know that this is actually set at 13. So this would be under reading. If you use this to tighten, say, a restorative screw, expecting to tighten it at 15 Newton centimeters, it would be incorrect. So I would advise that this should be changed because it's more than 10% below its expected value. And that's how you would test one of these thumb integral torque drivers, by simply connecting it and seeing which one is the first one to turn. Thank you.